to purchase the real property on Finch Avenue. Oh, okay. Oh, on this one.
Yeah,
Okay. Right.
two speakers. First speaker is Lisa Warren.
Hi. So the first time I saw a notation of Sedgwick expansion project, it was 11 months ago today. And I came to that meeting because I was interested and curious and wanted to know what the plans were. At that time, it wasn't clear what the expansion involved, but I assumed that it might involve this property. So I was very curious as to what was going to happen. That evening, it was on the agenda as a public hearing item, but it did not get discussed, and the minutes reflected it did not. After the meeting, I said, what happened? It didn't get discussed, and I talked to Chris and Jeremy at the time, and they said, oh, yeah, we didn't discuss it, but we weren't ready, or whatever the reason was. I asked for any information to be sent to me. I did get some information, but I had asked to be kept apprised of it. I checked in every once in a while. There was some delays in giving responses. Bottom line, I never really got any information about any of this. And now here it is, you're going to adopt something to purchase a piece of property that there was really no public notified plan for. And I don't understand how that can take place. I have a problem with the summary for tonight's agenda of the background of this project, because it mentions in paragraph 3 that on November 17th of 2015, staff presented to the board information regarding the potential purchase of the property, and on December 15th, 2015, which was that meeting where it wasn't on the agenda but not discussed, the district held a public meeting regarding the results of the preliminary environment assessment. That did not happen, and yet it's in the summary for tonight's meeting about this adoption of this resolution. It's in the minutes prior accurately that it was not discussed. So this is incorrect information. You have a public that deserves to know that the property is being purchased without a plan at a very high price, and that the soil is contaminated. And in August, your consultant told the soils people that you were at an impasse, you weren't going to purchase because of the price and the cost to clean it up. There's been no discussion about what the cost to clean it up is, what the contamination is, what that means to the public. I can't understand how you can be at this point without ever having anyone know anything about it. And now, without publicly stating a plan for the property. Now, there are emails there was at least one email that came from public information requests from February of this year, where there's discussion about possibility of housing it on this acre and a half or whatever it is. A school expansion, when it's discussed and put on the public agenda, doesn't even get discussed, as a expansion of a school site, that means the school site is expanded. That doesn't mean housing is put next to it. So there's a whole lot of non-information for you to move forward with the purchase of this property without that discussion seems really, really bad. Thank you for giving me the extra time.
Thank you. Do you have another comment?
Yes, one more. Randy Shingai.
Yeah, the point Lisa brings up about not having a plan. In fact, the staff report says the district has not determined use for this additional parcel. The resolution that you're going to be approving, hopefully you don't, says something about the acquisition of the property will allow for future expansion of the site or other district uses as may be determined by the district necessary. Okay, so my understanding is about $3.63 million is going to come from the Measure H bond fund. I got to say, as a former member of that oversight committee, you really have to specify a use, because a purchase for purposes of construction and repair of school facilities would be allowed, but I would think that an indeterminate purpose would not be allowed. Okay, and if you guys wanted to go ahead and do it anyway, somebody could sue at any time okay, and if you decided to use it for some purpose that's clearly not allowed, somebody could sue at that time. And that somebody is anybody that's a district resident or pays property tax. This is according to 2000's Prop 39, the conditions of, that Measure H used to be approved, okay? So I don't understand what the hurry is to buy something that has toxic contamination, and, when you don't even want to talk about a use, okay? So, and, you're opening yourself up for a lawsuit, and that lawsuit would be fast-passed by the, provisions of Prop 39, so that, for instance, it could happen any time somebody wanted to ruin the district's chances of passing, a bond measure or a parcel tax. So, I think it's just silly to go ahead with this. If you really care about the district, you'll vote this down, and you won't leave the district exposed to some pretty serious potential problems.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments? on this matter?
No other comments.
Okay.
But before Chris gets started, I do want to address the email statement, because when emails are lovely, especially when they're requested and portions of the emails are taken out. So there was a question from a board member: was it possible to ever put housing there? And theoretically, yes. Now, no, because we're using the bond funds. But the context of that email is basically saying, why would we? Because it's 6 parcels, you couldn't put many people there. The neighborhood doesn't really want development, doesn't desire development, and so that was ultimately the response. So just to put that in some context, so it's simply questions, and questions are answered, as they come. Not, as we know, we've not discussed any housing there, period. So I just want to make that clear, because that sometimes gets pulled out of context and it's not correct.
Okay, again, good evening. So just to give context to the board and the community, it's been about 2.5 years now since our district and our school board was originally approached by the property owners right next to the Sedgwick property. As you can see here on the map, Sedgwick and the dotted area, the red area is the property in question. Well, back in February 2014, the district was originally approached by the owner with the idea of the district if the district was interested in buying property. The owner at the time was also at the time thinking about developing the property himself. The district did respond with interest, as you may recall. At that point in time, the district started looking into the matter. We obviously have a lot of due diligence requirements involved. One of them obviously is to take a look and see if the property is safe. We have obligations to make sure that the property meets all those requirements. So we did go through our due diligence. And specifically about the question about the environmental hazards. Back in about a year ago, back in December, we did present to the board the preliminary environmental assessment. We had the public hearing. We invited the public to come in and comment on the document. And that night, the board did have the public hearing, and if I recall right, we did not have any comments from the public. And that, again, that was the discussion that night, was to make available the report as far as what the environmental impacts were. We've been negotiating with the property owner, as you are aware. Before you tonight is the resolution, as well as the purchase sale agreement. Should the board wish to take action on it, I do want to circle back to one of the questions that Randy brought up in regards to the Measure H question, as whether or not the funds are, as part of Measure H, can be used to acquire property. I'd like to introduce David Casanova. David is our bond counsel for Measure H, and David can maybe talk a little bit about the uses of Measure H per the ballot language, and let me introduce David.
Thank you very much. For the record, I'm David Casanova from Sterling, Carlson, and Roth, and I wrote Measure H that the board placed on the ballot a couple of years ago. So what kinds of projects are authorized by Measure H are found in two primary locations in the documents. One is in the 75-word ballot statement that the voters approved, and the second is in the bond project list that was submitted in every voter's sample ballot that describes in much greater detail the types of projects that are authorized to be funded with Measure H. So if you remember, the ballot measure said, among other parts of its 75-word length, that the district is authorized to spend bond monies for the renovating, acquiring, constructing, and equipping of classrooms, sites, and facilities. So that phraseology starts by authorizing the acquisition of land. That's what sites means. But more specifically, in the bond project list, is further references to the authority for the acquisition of land. And it's not conditioned upon anything. It's not conditioned to mean you can only buy land if you have an exact plan as to how you're going to dispose of that land, what you're going to develop on that land, how you're going to use the land. So there's no conditions preceding that are associated with the use of bond funds to buy property. I don't think you're exposed to any type of a lawsuit for the use of Measure H dollars to buy dirt. That's all okay. And there's always political conversations about whether how you deploy assets of the district are for the public good, but that's a political debate, that's not a legal debate. The legal issue is clear cut. You have the legal authority under Measure H, if you wanted to spend proceeds of that measure to acquire property and acquire this property not subject to any predetermined conditions or the needs to have a formal plan adopted as to how you expect to use the land. So happy to answer questions about that, but in my mind it's pretty conclusive just on its face.
I'm going to turn to the board and ask if you have any questions specifically on that topic. We do have the legal authority to buy using bond funds. Does anyone have any questions on that?
I just want to thank David for coming down tonight and explaining this to us.
Okay, thank you.
And now in regards to, again, the hazards on the property, I'd like to introduce Jerry Sewage. Jerry can talk a little bit about really the process of going through the environmental impact. But I do want to say more importantly, as if the board does take action and authorize the purchase of the property, we still have further due diligences to do. We still have to go forward and go to this California Department of Education and go through and get their approvals. And at that point in time, we will have to have defined a need for the use of the property. So we are just in the first parts of the approval. So let me ask Jerry to come up and talk a little bit about just the environmental pieces.
Before Jerry starts, can I just kind of clarify what you just said? You said we have to go to the California Department of Education, but that is only after we own the land. It's only at the point that we decide to use the land for something, correct?
Correct. We obviously can't do it until we acquire the land.
Okay.
My name is Jerry Sewage. My company is Oxbridge Development, Inc. In spite of the name of the company, I'm actually a real estate advisor exclusively to school districts in California, and I've been doing this for 22 years. My background is, before that, as a developer. I work with school districts on their acquisition of land for public use as well as their disposition of land. Just by way of context again, kind of supplementing what Chris has said, the interesting history of the property is that this is the skinny down farming site of the family that owned all of this land, including the land that Sedgwick is on. So my understanding is the Sedgwick land was bought by the district many years ago from this family, and this was the remainder piece. So in some ways it's kind of historically interesting that the family came back to the district to say, okay, are you interested in this? Rather than going forward, the current owner had a development background, so he could have, in theory, put in for an application with the city for a subdivision of 6 single-family homes. In terms of the due diligence that's done, or could not have been done, you actually don't have to do CD approval for property that you're not using state funds to acquire for public schools. So if you're just using local funds, you're not required until you take state monies for the development of a school on the property to do CDE. Similarly, you don't have to do a site evaluation for purposes of contamination with the Department of Toxic Substance Control unless you're using state money. That said, being prudent as this district has been, you would move forward. So there's been a preliminary look-see, as I understand, and a DTSC involvement on this property, and there was a recognized environmental concern, which simply was lead-based paint that could have washed off the buildings, old paint that would have had lead in it. And so when the buildings are demolished, there will be remediation of the dirt that has that lead-based paint in it. There was an old, many years ago, an old underground storage tank that had gasoline in it. That was taken out under the guidance of the county health department, and there was found to be, at the time, no leakage. And that area was also explored during this due diligence period, and was also found to be no leakage around that. What else can I tell you? I think that in terms of CEQA and whether you would go forward at some point with an environmental document, you would likely do that once you have a plan for the property. If there's going to be an expansion of Sedgwick on the property, whatever you do with it, presumably at that time you'd go forward with some form of CEQA document, whether it be a mitigated negative declaration or environmental impact report.
So I'm gonna ask the board if we have any questions here. I think we've been through this, yeah.
So Chris, you said, oh, sorry. In February of 2014 was when the district was first approached if they were interested in this land. Kristen and I weren't on the board yet, but we have sat through the closed sessions. But could you share with the public why the district might want to be interested in this property adjacent to Sedgwick? What would be the reason?
Obviously, right now, a school district such as ours, land is a very high demand commodity. Also, if you're familiar with the Sedgwick school site, we don't have the physical capacity for the kids that live in the Sedgwick area. And if I understand correctly, we have some kids that are overflowed out of Sedgwick. So there could very well be a potential opportunity to provide some classroom spaces to bring some of those kids back. One of the other identifiable things we know right now is when you look at the size of the campus, this is literally the only turf area, this area here. And when you look at it in terms of the number of kids that we have there, we do not have currently sufficient amount of green turf space for kids. So that again would be another possible use of this adjacent property.
Thanks.
Yeah, one more, yeah. Is I don't know if we're allowed to address this or not, but when they ask why would we rush into overpaying for something like this, are you able to address the answer to that?
Well, let me start by,
I don't know how much I can
first start by
say.
saying that originally, the question of whether we're overpaying for the property or not. So go back in time when the property owner originally approached us. At that time, he was offering the property to us at $5.75 million. And so over that amount of time, we've also done our due diligence and have gotten, I think, 3 appraisals during that period of time. So we've taken into account obviously what the current market rate is, and as you can see, we have negotiated the cost down to $5,386,000. So we are below what the appraised value is. So that's another reason why.
Anybody else have questions or comments?
I just have a comment that I believe that property is, as Chris said, highly valued in this community. And while we are a declining enrollment district, we know that we have some issues of enrollment in that end of the district. So I think to have an opportunity like this at the price is a good thing for us to do, even though we don't have plans right now to move forward with any sort of development. I think that the acquisition of the property, it makes that piece of land where Sedgwick sits whole, and it gives us some opportunities for expansion there if that's what we decide to do.
In fact, as Phyllis said, it's not we decide. If we ever go that direction, it would be a public process. It's going to be something that we will get the community involved in. At this point, as maybe everybody does, one of the things that we are able to do in closed session is negotiate a real estate deal, and that's what we did. and we all did our due diligence, and we truly feel that the price we came up with or are paying for this property is negotiated well, and we're not rushing into it. As Chris mentioned, we started this process back in 2014, and at that point, it was Ben and Gary who were on the board, and Sona and Kristen were not, and they joined the board, came up to speed with it, and we've had, and all of you who follow our agenda have seen closed session with the Finch Property listed on it. So we had numerous opportunities where we've been told by our negotiating team as to how it's progressing, and they've taken the direction from us as to what we wanted the price to be. And thank you for working with us on that.
Chris, I guess I'm gonna look, any more comments? Chris, do you have anything more you wanna share?
No, I'll take any more questions as you ask.
I'm just gonna say, I think, as Phyllis said, this is a really rare opportunity to add a piece of land to an existing school site. I do think there's a certain symmetry to the fact that this was the original farmhouse for the land that I think was actually acquired by eminent domain to build Sedgwick School. And this was the piece that the family kept as part of their farmhouse. And the fact that they actually came to us and asked if we would be interested in rejoining it back to the original property, I think is appropriate. I mean, the reason we have not decided what to do or put a proposal out there for what to do is because there are future needs, and I think as we move forward, we have the opportunity to have a conversation about what is the best uses. But you either buy the land now or it's gone, so it's either a now or never opportunity. And if nothing else, if we put grass on there and make a larger play field for the students that are there for a while, I mean, park and land in this area is getting more and more scarce, so I think it's a community resource, and I think it's the right thing to do, so I support, and I thank all the people that worked with us to help us get a good deal on this property. Anybody else? So I think, I need a motion and a second, unless anyone has anything else they wanna say. Okay, so Anjali's the motion, I need a second, please.
I second.
The motion has been moved and seconded, it's a roll call vote, Anjali?
Yes.
Josephine, yes. Kristen?
Yes.
Soma?
Yes.
Phyllis?
Yes.
Thank you, and I thank everyone for their work.